Hello, hello, hello. I'm here with Miss Tanja Diamond. I'm going to let her kind of introduce herself, but there's a reason she's here. She knows a lot of stuff about the ins and outs of TED and TEDx, and that's why I wanted to bring her up here to shed the juicy insight that maybe is not super common knowledge yet. So, Tanja, stage is yours. Who are you and what you doing here?
Absolutely. Who I am. Who am I? I am Tanja Diamond, and I am an autistic polymath, which is something that's kind of unusual. A lot of people don't know what polymath is, let alone think autistic people get on podcasts and talk. So I have been a business and life strategist for over 40 years now. Yes, I'm that old. And entered the TEDx scene probably in the last 3 years, working as a TEDx speaker coach for a company called Thought Leader, as well as have run my own TEDx back in October. And I've been strategist, curator, and speaker coach for 5 other TEDx events. And I'm a 2-time international TEDx speaker. So I've been around in the speaking industry for a long time, but recently in the TEDx industry. So that's me.
Awesome. So first question I have for you, you're kind of a unique breed in the sense of you've given the TEDx talk, not only 1, but 2. You've organized your own TEDx event, what was it called? Woodinville. Okay. And then you've also, both TEDx talks, I think one of them was international or both were, I don't remember. Was it 1 or 2?
One was in Zimbabwe and the other was in Georgia.
Cool. Georgia the country or Georgia the state?
Georgia the state.
Okay, gotcha. And then you also work for a company that helps people land TEDx talks, right? Correct. So you've done it all, so to speak, with, in the TEDx sphere.
Load up the TEDx basket.
That's why I wanted to have you here, is because you have all this experience, which I'm sure there's a lot of knowledge there that is not all that public, and so I wanted to kind of get you here to share that knowledge that is not common knowledge yet, and hopefully make it a little bit more common.
Demystify the TEDx.
Exactly. And I think normally when I have, TEDx organizers on or TEDx speakers on or coaches on here or business owners on here, there's a lot of questions that I ask about kind of like looking under the hood of what, as if it were a car, right?
Yeah.
Of what's actually going on under the image of and the branding of TEDx. So I'll ask you kind of just the first question, then we'll kind of go from there, just where the convo flows. What do you think is something that aspiring speakers, professional speakers, business owners that speak should know that they don't right now?
About TEDx, I'm presuming. So I'm writing a book called On the Way to the TEDx Stage, because we have this illusion, because we see videos on the TEDx platform, right?
Sure.
So we see the video and we're like, oh, that's how it looks, or that's the format, or whatever it is we assume by looking at that. The behind the scenes stuff is really, really different. And that can be everywhere from how an organizer helps you as a speaker. Like some organizers, like I was super detailed. We did speaker coaching. We did office hours. Like we supported the speakers a ton. And then there's organizers that are like, hey, you're accepted. And you show up for the event. So if you're a new speaker, that's really daunting. I know at our first one, we were wandering around an hour before the event trying to figure out what building we were speaking in. And so that can be really, very disconcerting, especially if you're a speaker. If you've been speaking before, a TEDx is completely different. It's not the same thing. And so that's the other thing, is you may have done keynotes and workshops, written a book, and you think you're going to do a TEDx talk that's like that. But that's not what a TEDx talk is all about. So that throws people too. Timeframes are getting shorter. Most people don't know the difference between TED and TEDx. Hopefully, of course, people that listen to you actually know that. But even TEDx's used to be 18 minutes. I'm curating one now that's 10 minutes. One of my speaker clients got one that is 8 minutes. So it's coming down because our attention spans are shorter, and TEDx is realizing people aren't watching the long talks anymore. It's just not going to happen. And so that's shocking, because that's like under 1,000 words, at 800 words. You got to land a solution to a problem in 800 words. That's challenging. So support along the way. Some people think they fill out, there are very few people that understand that it takes a lot of applications to land a TEDx talk. People will like apply to one event and go, oh, I didn't get selected. Yeah, I got 300 apps for my event. So there's a lot of people applying. And so it's a numbers game. Literally, when I'm getting mine, I apply to everything. I just find my list and I apply. And then it takes an average of about 100 apps usually for most people to land something. But you don't know when they're looking at it. You apply today, they might not look at your app for 8 months. And then people don't understand that either. So at the company I contract with, Thought Leader, I help people fill out applications or, learn what is needed on an application, learn how to do that all the way through the talk. So even behind the scenes with the apps, when you get an application that says name, email, and your idea in 10 words, I've had people just say, oh, I don't have 10 words, and they just keep writing. An organizer just rejects that if you can't follow the direction that they asked you. A video, 60-second video. People send videos that are 5 minutes saying they can't do a shorter video for their idea. You're going to get ousted because they want to see if you can follow directions. So those are some of the things that I think are a surprise, or that people don't realize what's going on behind the scenes. When I'm looking at an application, I have to put on a diverse event, right? Like, so there has to be things, and people will give you a general love heals all. There's my idea. That's a message. A TEDx idea is writing yourself a love letter for 30 days can teach you about self-love. That's a TEDx idea, right? So I think there's there's different formats out there. Most people go look at TED and then they go, I'm going to write my talk like a TED. Well, those aren't TEDx's. It's not the same thing. Those speakers are a year of training and coaching and talk writing and stuff. So yeah, I've seen some really crazy TEDx talks. The other thing people don't realize is the average TEDx talk. Do you know how many views they get?
You asked me to guess?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess, I guess I'm biased because I've kind of been in it, but I'm going to guess 400 views.
Yeah, it's about 500. And people think, I'm going to do a TEDx talk and I'm going to be famous. I'm going to do a TEDx talk and I'm going to make a ton of money. I'm going to do a TEDx talk and it's going to go viral. Here's something that people hate to hear, and I'm going to say it. So this might be juicy under the hood stuff right here. Today, just like everything else, marketing, people are buying views, and they're going and like how you can get on Forbes magazine, Inc. magazine, get a New York Times bestseller. You can get 1 million views by hiring a company that'll get you that.
Of course.
And a lot of people are shocked by that because we still believe that, a great talk is going to go viral. But that's if you have a big following.
Yeah, I think it's, when I first heard that, I was kind of surprised, but then I thought there were a few business owners that I had met that they had purchased followers on like Instagram. And I was like, okay, if they're doing that, then it wouldn't surprise me if that's possible for views on a YouTube channel as well.
Yeah. And some companies do bots, which is bad because that's never going to be good for you. But other companies are more legit. But it's sad to think getting a best-selling thing, getting your book to a bestseller is not that hard these days either. And so I think what's happening with all that is we're getting I think TEDx, the authority's still there. Being a TEDx speaker is awesome. It's just like being a bestseller is awesome. And I think we're also, so many people are becoming organizers that I see the quality of TEDx talks going down as, well, a lot of organizers don't hire speaker coaches or don't get a speaker coach on their team that knows how to help somebody format this. And so some of the quality is actually going down. I wouldn't be surprised. And, I'm probably going to get shot by TED or TEDx at this point, that, the authority won't hold as long in another 10 years, sadly. TED, yes, because, that's the big kahuna, right?
Right. And there's one TED event in Vancouver a year, or is there more than one? Okay.
Yeah, that's the big.
And how many speakers do they have yearly or at
You know
their?
what? I should know that, but I don't, because I'm in more the TEDx realm than the TED. But I know those speakers spend a year, at least, they spend a long time with coaches and everything else working on every aspect of their talk.
Right. And then, okay, so I'm curious, this is more just a personal curiosity. So did you see the Chris Anderson interview of Elon?
I have not.
Okay.
Is it fun?
So I don't know if it's considered a TEDx talk or a TED talk, because it's Chris Anderson's thing. He does TEDx, not TED, right? But then it's also a one-on-one interview. Is it TED?
Yeah, interviews are not TED or TEDx's.
Gotcha. Okay, so that clarifies it for me. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And then for you and your experience as a, I can call you a professional speaker, right? Like you'd say that. So you do paid speaking gigs that are not TED Talks. I know TED Talks aren't paid, but in addition to those, you do paid speaking.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So how do you balance? I'm assuming on the back end of the paid speaking, there's a business of some kind as well.
Yeah, sure. It depending on what you're doing. So like motivational speaking, you're up there on the stage trying to rile the crowd, right? And so what'll happen from there is your hope is, they're going to look you up or come get you. Like pitch from stage, there's sell from stage gigs, right? Where you're literally the point is to sell to the back of the room. So people are running to the back of the room to buy your thing. And then there's workshop speaking, right? Which people have already paid to go to listen to. Keynotes, which people pay you and may or may not result in business other than the paid speaking that you did. So there's a lot of things for what we're doing as speakers.
And how have you been able to successfully balance this kind of pendulum of TEDx talks and business? And because I know TEDx hates business. I mean, is that a right assumption, or maybe I'm wrong?
Well, I have a great little story about being held up. I got my wrist slapped by TEDx. So yes, TEDx is not about commercialization, right? And so they are adamant that, you can't sell from stage. So we all know this going into a TEDx. This is not a pitch fest, right? This is all about, though you have an entire bio right under your talk. So the hope is obviously if you're great at doing what you're doing, somebody might look you up to coach with you or do something. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that, but you can't overtly pitch from stage. So when I was putting on my TEDx event, TEDxWoodinville, and I became an organizer, we were about 3 weeks out from our talk, for 3 weeks out from our event, when I got a phone call. Hi, is this Tanja Diamond? I'm like, yeah, well, this is so-and-so from the TEDx committee, licensing committee. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they were upset because I am a speaker coach. And on my Speaking Coach website, I referenced my TEDx's and that I contracted with a company that did help people get on TEDx stages, and that I have ghostwritten TEDx talks and all this. Well, they were going to, they thought about pulling my license. And I'm like, well, I don't understand. And they're like, well, you cannot commercialize TEDx events. And I'm like, well, I'm not commercializing the event. And they're like, but you're not in the spirit. So this guy was very, he holds the ideal of a TEDx standard, probably in the way that in a purist world it would be, which is nobody ever pitches to an organizer. The organizer is supposed to go out and find people in the wild that don't want to do a talk, but they're doing something awesome in the community, and you go find them and convince them and somehow turn them into a speaker with a great talk in 4 months. And I'm like, really? So applications, he was down on applications. He was down on so many things, but he wouldn't tell me that I was going to be shut down. I said, I'm 3 weeks from this event. Are my speakers going to be able to go to the platform? What's going to happen here? Just tell me. If it's shut down, tell me so that I can, speakers were flying in. He goes, oh no, you can't do that. You can only have local speakers. What if I can't get enough local speakers? He says, then you don't have an event. So it was very, very intense. And so I said, look, none of my clients are going to my stage. That's what I understand. I would never put a client of mine on my stage because that would be a conflict of interest. And yet I see all of these TEDx having speaker like, workshops and stuff like that. And then somehow the speakers end up on their TEDx stage. This is a real big conflict. I was not doing that. But anyway, our event went on and everything was fine. But yes, so the licensing committee is, and I told him what I said in an email was, if it is true that I have violated my TEDx license, that would be your responsibility on how you vetted me, because all this stuff is public. There was nothing that I held back from what I do. You can just find me anywhere. Wouldn't you, if you were vetting your licensees and these things were so important to you, that you'd do a background check or check on, see if they were actually somebody you would license? So anyway, that was a little bit of excitement in the midst of 3 weeks out. And of course, I was totally transparent with my speakers. I immediately shot a video and told them, this is what's going on. If you want to pull out now, I understand. If you just want to forge ahead, let's see what happens. I understand. I don't know what's going to happen. And they're all like, Team Tanja, Team Woodinville, let's do this. Of course, they all just jumped. It was a great community. They supported me well. We all supported each other. It was like a big family. So it all went well. In fact, a guy from TED showed up at my event.
Wow.
And not the licensing committee. I think this was totally something else random, and said it was one of the best TEDx's he had ever seen. And the speakers were top notch. So.
And then I was talking to another TEDx organizer, and she was saying, this was after we had the recording, and she mentioned one problem right now that TEDx is having is a way to help TEDx speakers, whether it's take that credibility from the TEDx stage and turn it into something, or do something with that TEDx talk. She's saying right now the system is you do your TEDx talk and then that's it.
Yeah, you can use 30-second clips for commercial. So you can take a 30-second clip off the YouTube channel, because you're never supposed to be able to touch your raw footage. You're never supposed to have that video in your possession. I see that being violated all over the place when I go to events. Nobody's supposed to ever film anything except the videographer crew. I see that going crazy. So I'm a rule follower, being autistic. I'm like a hardcore rule follower, and I see like so many crazy violations all the time. But you can take a 30-second clip off your video and use it like for commercial purposes. You can use a 30-second. You can use a 60-second for non-commercialized things. So people say, well, I can just like take 60 seconds of my 8-minute talk, 8 clips, and put it out there. The point is that you want to really get those views, right, in the one place where it counts. But if you don't get a lot of views, those are the rules. You can take 30 seconds, you can take 60 seconds, and those is how you can use them. But I've been thinking about starting a speaker company, my own speaking company, because what's after TEDx, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can do your TEDx talk other places. You can modify it and use it and to continue on with speaking. But there seems to be, the TEDx is an authority badge, right? When you write TEDx behind your name, you get instantly more credibility. So that does help you get other speaking gigs or helps promote you in other ways. But everything's marketing. Like, it doesn't just happen, right? Marketing is what does it. Whether it's you're talking about Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule or something like that. Somebody's marketing her. It just isn't that like, oh, that just blasted off because of one thing. So I think we have the idea we're going to do one thing and that's going to be it. And people pay a lot of money, right, to programs to do TEDx talks, $10,000 and above sometimes to be able to do this. They think they're going to monetize that back, but only if you understand how to market. And so it's that one piece of your marketing tool is a TEDx talk.
And how many clients have you worked with now, helping them find their idea worth spreading and build their application?
So probably over 1,500.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So how many of those were business owners and or speakers that were doing it? I'm sure they had an awesome idea, but it needed some chiseling to.
Most people don't have awesome ideas. They have big messages. I think the biggest struggle point in any of the TEDx journey is distilling down an actual idea from your messy, what I call messy message.
How would you suggest someone goes about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely.
That general idea, that general message, and getting it so it is,
Yeah. So and this is my love. Okay. This is my strategy. This is my favorite part of everything, is this part right here. So somebody comes to me and they're like, I want to change the education system. Awesome. That's not an idea. That's like a mission. So within that, who are you talking to? Everybody. No. You got 1,500 words. Who are you talking to? Okay. Oh, I'm talking to teachers and school board. Pick one. What? Pick one. I'm talking to parents. Great. That's awesome. What do you want to tell parents what they can do about the education system? Oh, they can talk to the school board. About what? Right. So if a TEDx idea is literally one problem and one solution, it's not a 15-step acronym with a star with a silent T and 3 R's or what. Forget about it. Nobody remembers that. So I say how to find it is remember that it's got to be unremarkably, unclimactically simple. So one topic. So if you're going to talk about the school system and how education is hard and you want parents to help, it would be like you're talking to parents. You're talking to parents about what? Okay, school. What about school? Oh, about the education. No, too big. What about school? Schools should teach this and that. Okay, that's a parent can't make that change. So now you're talking to the school board. So we keep diving down, distilling. So you have to have a specific audience, and it's usually who you were when you had the problem you're talking about. Okay, who you were when you had a problem that you solved. That's step number one, because you're going to tell a story on a TEDx stage. It's a story-based lesson learning. So your problem that you had, the emotional problem, and the first solution that you found is usually your idea. I was depressed, and then I found journaling, right? So there it is. And then what is your point? Like how I use journaling or using journaling to overcoming depression would be a TEDx idea. But people like to pile. I say when you start adding the word and, there's this, and there's this, and there's this. I like the metaphor I use a lot is you're doing a load of delicate whites. Don't throw anything else in that basket. So, for instance, like one of my talks is, I can say that, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So by practicing random acts of inconvenience, we're able to slow down in our hyper fast world and see if animals and people need our help. So random acts of inconvenience makes it unique. I could have just said we need to slow down and see if people need our help, right? But random acts of inconvenience is my thing that I created. And all I'm doing is solving the problem of that we've become hyper-convenient, so we're not noticing things around us. And I almost let a man die because of not wanting to be inconvenienced. Of course, I didn't know a man was dying, but I found out. So that was a problem. I'd become this person that used to, save squirrels and miss planes to save a squirrel wandering around downtown Denver. And then all of a sudden I was that person driving down the road that was like, I saw something weird, but I tried to talk myself out of stopping because I didn't want to be inconvenienced. And that's how I came up with this idea. So when I turned around and found a man in a wheelchair laying on a slope, I realized I needed a radical shift in my life from where I was going. So looking at who you were, talking to a specific audience, we tend to think we want our TEDx talks to be global. They can be global. Just because we're talking about a specific pain to a specific audience doesn't mean other people won't feel what we're saying or share it with somebody they know that's related, right? So who you were, specific audience, it's usually you and the problem, your specific problem, and the solution, a seed of a solution. We're not giving people trees. We're giving people a seed. We cannot solve an entire problem in 1,500 words. So don't try to overpromise. Full life potential, if I hear that again, I'll probably stab myself in the ear, along with authentic life truth or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, 300 applications. Full authentic potential. I'm like, what are you even talking about? can't do that. So look at simplicity, I think, is the real key on that.
That's valuable, very valuable. Then when you have a client, you help them find the idea, they have the idea, they get your approval or whatever you call it. You say, hey, this is a great idea. I know this is a very high likelihood of getting accepted. Now it's application time. Now time to submit. What does that journey normally look like for your clients? Do they go to the TEDx events website and find the application on one of their sites, or what does that look like?
Yeah, this is the hardest part of everything in TEDx. Okay, TED does not make this easy. TEDx does not make this easy. The list. This is why people pay companies. All right, so like Thought Leader has curated a list. So if it's a Thought Leader client that I'm working with, they have access to a list that somebody else curates, right? They do all the legwork. So that's easy peasy. Just go down the list and apply. If you're out in the wild, this is a totally different experience, because you go on, you're like, okay, TED, you go to the TED.com site and you see the little dots all over the map, right? Ooh, awesome. And there's pages and pages of these talks. The reality is each organizer gets a license for 1 year, right? So that little dot is supposed to be active only when that is active. But then it's not always the case. You'll find things that aren't active. But now you're like, where do I apply? You cannot find it anywhere, because chances are it's not on the TED platform. So then you look up the organizer and you got to find them on LinkedIn or some crazy thing, or try to find the website for the TEDx talk. And this is what I did before I became a Thought Leader client long ago, because now I'm contracted with them, but I used to be a client. That's what I was doing, like everybody else is doing. And when I became an organizer, when my little dot went live on TED, I got inundated. It was like more friends than owning a yacht, become a TEDx organizer. I mean, LinkedIn emails were dropping everywhere that I had. Before I'd even read my acceptance letter, I was getting emails saying, I can speak on your stage. I want to speak on your stage. And all varying times of like, I can do you a favor and speak on your stage, to, I have the best idea ever. Here it is, like 15 pages. But so it's a difficult process. And I would say that's probably the number one reason people end up in programs, is because these lists are curated for you. But you can do it. You just have to, like, if you email an organizer, please say this. Everybody listen up. Hi, dear TEDx organizer, or their name. I'm interested in your event. Would you please send me your speaker application link? Thank you. That's all. Please don't say anything else. That's it. That's all you need to say. And then don't bug the organizer. Please don't bug the organizers. We have so much to do. It's such a big thing to put on one of these, and we don't make any money doing it. It's huge and no money. So please don't bug the organizers. Just ask them one time, get the link, and then let it go. So yeah, that's the process that's really hard. Sometimes if you go to TED events, here's the other thing, go to TEDx events in your area and actually get to know the team. If they're putting on multiple events, usually it's the same relative team, even though organizers can change licenses. You can get a different organizer, but show up, volunteer for a TEDx, right? Get to know the community. That's a way to get to know. If you get to know the community, you're more liable to get to know organizers and teams and stuff like that, and get those application links, or get invited if you happen to end up organizing or volunteering, and get to know somebody and you're a speaker, right? So kind of give to the community is kind of a helpful idea as well, right?
And then once one of your clients, they have their idea, they submit the application. You said about 100 is the average number, I think. They get the talk, they get their TEDx spot secured, they go through the coaching process, which we could talk about in a second. They are now a TEDx speaker. How do you recommend to
once they walk off the stage?
Yeah, right, exactly. Once they walk off the stage.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if it counts if their TEDx talk isn't uploaded to YouTube. Are they?
That's an interesting thing, right? Because one of the things that I'm noticing recently is TEDx is flagging way more talks than they ever did. In the last 6 months, they're dropping disclaimers on lots of people's things. And I've heard of several. I've had like 4 in the recent 6 months clients' talks not get put up, even though their talks were in compliance, because I'm an organizer. I know what compliance is. And there's a lot of stuff going on right now as more of these talks flood in. So I tell people, once you walk off the TEDx stage, you're a TEDx speaker, even if your video never goes to the platform, because you've got a video, you've got photos, you did a TEDx event, right? So I tell my speakers, as soon as you walk off that stage, grab your phone, hit bio, write TEDx speaker on it.
And how do you suggest, maybe you've seen this with one of your 1,500 clients that you've helped, how do you suggest TEDx speakers monetize that credibility that they now have as a TEDx speaker? Because that, I don't think, is very clear to a lot, at least from TEDx's side.
Well, yeah, because you're not doing it to monetize it on TEDx's side.
Exactly. Yeah.
So given that your talk can take anywhere from 2 weeks to a year to get up to the platform. That's the other thing people don't realize. As an organizer, once I get the videos back, I have to upload them to a specific portal, right? And then I get to wait until TEDx review committee comes around and reviews them. That can be months. So you don't actually start, okay, this is what I had my team, my TEDxWoodinville people do. Before you even get on the stage, you start creating a storyboard of your journey to the stage so that you're gathering your peeps, right? You're getting interest. You're talking about, oh yeah, we did this today. And so our speakers were round robin. We got all together. And so there were 20 speakers, which most people never do, but I only had 5 to 9 minute talks, right? And so all of them hooked up with everybody else on all their social medias, right? And each of them would share each other's posts when they said after hours we did. So we started a big momentum going about TEDxWoodinville, hashtagging. So people were already starting to follow, answering questions. I interviewed each of the speakers beforehand, sent those videos out so they could cut up all those videos and start using them. And so we created this whole several month, I think it was 6 months of constant, TEDx coming, da 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 da. So then afterwards is also there's continuing going about how the event went. So we're dripping out feed because we're not live yet. My video editors have taken all this time since October. So it's like my poor crew is waiting, but they already knew that. So they're still keeping the momentum going. What's happened after putting TEDx on their bio? They're all getting interviewed on podcasts and things like that. So they've got it. All of this building to once their video drops, they all know to not share it immediately. They know to create a launch party. So with all of these collecting everybody, right? All this stuff that everybody's been doing, 20 people round robining all this, when they each have their launch parties, they get to lean into everybody else. So strategically, we'll be launching these in a way that they aren't all at the same time. And everybody else's crew, the 20 people's followings, they'll be sharing, right? So what you want to do is hit that algorithm in a few hours with a whole bunch of people looking at it. That drives the algorithm higher than dripping it out. So yeah, so that's how to market. So I've been marketing since 92 online, right? So that's a long time. And so the marketing of the behind the scenes, now how do they monetize that beyond that, is getting on podcasts, right? Getting known for this, using the TEDx authority badge as a way to promote yourself. And then that question beyond that is all about having a good plan. So now we're talking about internet marketing. If you don't have a good plan, or your talk was nothing to do with what you do, I don't know how you may monetize. Somebody may call you up and say, well, that's interesting, I'd like you on this stage, but that's not usually what happens. So I like to start monetizing, if you're going to monetize your TEDx talk, before you formulate your idea. Your idea should be formulated around what it is that you want to achieve.
So how do you, that is super interesting for that person and that idea. How do they go about the balance between building the TEDx idea with already having something in mind that they will leverage that credibility to monetize, without that idea being directly sounding like a pitch, right? How do you suggest doing?
Well, because you don't talk, so you can seed credibility in a TEDx, right? You can, like, if the number one thing you want people to do after watching your TEDx is buy your book, you can't use the title of your book, but you can say in your journey while you're teaching people whatever it is you learned or you want to teach them, because it's what you learned and then what you want to teach the audience. You say, while I was writing my book, I noticed this and this when I was interviewing people, or I found out by researching in my book, I was able to do this, or let's say you're a podcaster, right? So when I interview people on my podcast, we frequently talk about X, Y, and Z. So the ability to seed credibility, or like for mine, I said, so I turned to myself and my thousands of clients' lives and asked this question. So now you know that I've coached thousands of clients, right? So you can have little bits of that in there, but really it's about the strategy would be if you're a speaker coach, for instance, and you were doing a talk, you wouldn't do a talk on how to write a book if you wanted people to come. So your idea is your problem, but most of us are coaching what problems we used to have and we found solutions to. So most of us are doing that. So then it makes sense. If you're a business owner and you're trying to pitch your business, that's really hard. That's not, why you wouldn't, I would think you could maybe do something better than using a TEDx stage. So that's another piece of this puzzle. Should everybody do a TEDx talk? I don't think so. Right? Maybe there's better ways and different, because there's a lot of talk platforms out there. And if TEDx itself doesn't monetize you, it doesn't market you except for being on their platform, there are a lot of speaking companies out there. Blue Talks, Tag Talks, Mastermind Talks, the Speak events. I mean, there's tons of speaker companies that will help you get your reels, get all that stuff you need. Because when you leave a TEDx, you don't have a speaker reel either. So trying to transition to a paid speaker, you don't have a one page, you don't have a speaker reel, you have TEDx authority. That's one piece of the puzzle if you want to be a speaker. Right. So there's other things behind the scenes that you need. So there may be a different way that you need to go depending on what your end goals are. Does that make sense? I answered the question.
Yeah, 100%. What would you say is one other thing that in your experience as a TEDx speaker, you kind of had as I guess it's called, the uninformed optimism before you gave your TEDx talk, and then after, right?
Great.
What was the difference there? Something you realized?
Such a great question. So I went into my first TEDx talk knowing that you don't know what's going on behind the scenes there. You don't know what, organizer, TEDx organizer to me is a pretty loose term, the word organizer. I'm sure I'm making lots of friends on this podcast, by the way. So, organizer seems to be a very loose term. And so I thought I hired my own video crew and photographers to come to the first TEDx event I did, just in case. And I've actually been selected, but actually I've been accepted to 10 TEDx's and I've done 2. That's a story. Exactly. Yeah. There's a story there. That's why I'm writing the book. Anyway, my first TEDx, like I said, not organized. We were kind of left on our own. Good luck for us if we knew how to write a talk. It was just like a scene. So we get there. Like I said, an hour before, we're trying to wander around the building, trying to figure out what building we're supposed to be in, which is stressful. If you're a stressed person, you're going to be stressed. I was casual. I was like, okay, this will be fun. Show up. Speakers are not supposed to interact with the organizer. In other words, you stay in your speaker lane. The organizer interacts with you. The team interacts with you. You're not supposed to be telling the organizers what to do. There's like this whole speakers don't help the organizers, right? But I walked out there and they had a little podium thing in this weird room and it said TED on the stage. I kind of sided up to the organizer. Hi, I'm Tanja, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I said, so when are the other letters coming? And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, the other letters, your whole brand, name, X, what? And she goes, oh, do we need those? We cannot stand in front of TED, baby, and make this thing go anywhere. Right. So we ended up having to cut out, somebody cut out, went to the construction paper store, cut out these letters, and they're taped. So they're taped to each other with pop cans holding them up behind the scenes. The lighting was only overhead lighting, horrible, made us all look way heavier than we were, bad shadows, not cool. And she was going to film it on her iPhone.
Wow.
I kid you not. So there's some probably questions you want to ask after you get accepted. Before you sign your speaker agreement, there may be some questions you want to ask, because just going and looking at last year's may not be the same as this year's kind of thing. But so anyway, it was a scene. They had a mic with a 6-foot cord that, yeah. So I just spoke because I knew the video. I was mic'd for my video, so I didn't really worry about the speaker. But yeah, I think mics can change. Tech issues happen. Your audience can be 2 people or 100. You don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
And getting accepted, I think that's one thing I want to hit on right here, where you just said, I've been accepted to 10 TEDx talks, but I've only given 2. What's the story there?
Yeah, right. The mystery. So the first TEDx I got accepted to was TEDx London. And TEDx London says they don't accept anybody but what's right around them. And that's interesting because I'm in Seattle. But here's what happens. If you can't find speakers in your area, then you start pulling applications from outside of the area. So one rule I violate when I'm applying, the only direction I violate when I'm applying is that I have to live there. I let them reject me. Right? So everything was cool. Great interview. They were super excited and stoked. I was super excited, stoked. Then I got the email because that was when COVID reoccurred. Right? We had that second round and everything kind of, yeah. And
what was the month and year at that time?
Was that 21, like December, January, something like that, somewhere around there. I think leading it, yeah. And so that was a no-go. They sadly said, we're only going to do right here just in case everything shuts down or whatever. They didn't want me traveling and doing all of that, right? Okay. And I may not have even been able to get on the plane. Next was a TEDx in Canada, and that one just disappeared. It was like, because sometimes first-time organizers don't understand that a TEDx can cost $10,000 to put on, and an organizer's on the hook for all that money unless they get sponsors. So sometimes first-time organizers don't know this and can't find funding, and so they can't get anything going. So they end up getting their speakers onboarded and then find out they can't do it and they disappear. So then I got another one in Canada, but everything was going great. And then they said, well, were you vaccinated? And I'm like, oh, crap, that hasn't lifted yet. No. Yeah. Then Hawaii, that organizer was out to make money. She was actually trying to charge speakers $2,000 to be videotaped by her husband to whatever. And so a bunch of us were there, and I'm like, yeah, this is kind of violation. Yeah, he has a different company, whatever, but it's a little bit. So I ended up saying no to that one. And it kind of goes on like that. So there's like things falling apart. There's things where I say no because something looks dicey, right? Then one of my friends ended up putting on a TEDx event that fell apart too. So finally, I made it to Georgia, and then I made it to Zimbabwe a little while after that. But I'm going for more, so I'm still applying. So we'll see what happens. So all to say, that's why I'm writing the book on the way to the TEDx stage, is because I'm gathering stories from people on the way that doesn't look like that fairy tale that we think about. Recently, one of my clients got selected, and she had 19 days. So we managed, right? Yeah, we wrote her talk, and she like hit it out of the park, but she actually got it done in 19 days, from talk writing to talk memorization to the stage.
That's tough. That is very tough.
Right? So you don't know how much time you have. That's unusual. And then you get like alternate. If you get tagged as an alternate, that's weird too, because you have to get ready for the talk, but you don't know that you're going to do the talk sometimes within a few days of the talk. So that's a little bit crazy. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind that video that you see finally on the platform.
Yeah. And when you go about applying to all of these talks, I know, and this might be wrong, but what I've kind of come to understand is once an idea is already presented on a TEDx stage, it has already been spread and therefore is no longer an idea worth spreading. Why do I say that? Because when you are going to all these TEDx talks, the ideas are different. I'm assuming, is there a line of, like, let's say you're accepted to 3 at the same time because you applied to 100 and you got accepted to 3,
Yeah.
but they're on the same idea and you have
So
3 yes.
that's a great thing. So I had a client who got accepted to 4 in 10 applications. Wow. That's like a wow. Yeah, that is a wow, right? All because we were very specific about his idea. It was so tight and very specific. So he's like, oh, I just got accepted. What do we do now? Because if you get another talk, this is why I plant a seed, okay? Because if you plant a seed, your idea has multiple branches, which leads into other talks. So if you're general, you've blown it all because there's no way to, it's like general. So he was suicide in the construction industry, which is pretty specific, right? In the construction industry, right? So he was able to pivot because he has to change. You can't do the same talk twice. So able to pivot to a different angle within that idea. So you may say that 50% of your talk needs to be different, right? At least the idea. You can use your same up story or down story possibly, but your idea better have a different pivot. So if you have a tree of knowledge, but you plant a seed at a TEDx, you got a lot of seeds and different branches you can then select from. So what would you do? You would write to the first organizer. You'd write to the new organizer, the second pick, let's say, and say, hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate being accepted. I'm giving that idea to another TEDx talk, but here is what I'd like to propose. And because it's still within the realm of the main idea, usually we're a yes.
That is very good to know. And how often has that happened for you?
People get doubles?
Yeah. Of the 1,500 clients, you'd say?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably like in a short order like that before they do one, like multiple before they've even done one is like, maybe 2 people. Getting other TEDx's as you go along, or maybe you've already done one and stuff like that, but your apps are out. So when you send in an app, let's say I send it in on a January 1st, Monday, I have zero idea when that's getting looked at. It might be 6 months from now, 5 months from now, 8 months from now. It might be that it's 2 years from now because it stayed on their pile and now they've decided they want to do that. So you don't know. So maybe you've done your first one and all of a sudden that app that you sent out now has tagged somebody else like a year from now, right? So that happens. And that's maybe 20% of the time. But most people are so exhausted getting their first TEDx done, like literally all the work it takes to apply, because literally you just have to apply and let go. Because here's the other thing. You never hear back from, like less than 1% do you hear anything back. So it's like sending your baby out into the void and never hearing anything, right? It gets very discouraging. You get so excited when you get a rejection letter. You're like, woo, somebody read my application. So it's easy to think your idea isn't any good as you're in this long haul. So this is a marathon. This is not a sprint, right, to the TEDx stage. So I think that, then you put so much work into the talk. And then the talk day, that's tough. That's got a lot of things in it. And then waiting for your talk to come out. And then you have your talk. And then you're all like, and now what? There's the post TEDx blues that almost everybody goes through. The letdown right after the talk that makes you go, and so a lot of people do one because it's a Herculean, is that the right word? Effort to do that. Then there's those crazy people like me that are like, I don't know, how many can I do? Then I heard rumors that TED is saying no to multiple TEDx talks. So that's come down the pipeline that I heard on the big community, that there might be that they only let you have one talk a year or not multiple.
Sure. Yeah. I know.
So
I got accepted to my first talk this was in September. I got accepted for the following October.
congratulations. That's a nice long time frame.
Yeah, this was a long time. This was a few years ago. And then I got accepted to another talk in April that was to be given in June. I gave the talk in June, and my friend posted a photo on my LinkedIn and on his LinkedIn of me giving the talk in June. And the organizers of the talk I was giving in October saw the photo and said, "Hey, we have a one TEDx talk a year policy to avoid the TEDx chasers," is what they called it.
Yep.
And they said, "So we're going to have to rescind your acceptance from this talk for
Yep.
this year, and you can't do this." I just waited a
Yep.
year, reached out to them again, but I get it. There's that. I think the one time thing is that like an individual organizer's decision, or there's not really a policy, or what does it look like?
It's being talked about because TED themselves in the review committee, some have not allowed a video up from somebody that has multiple TEDx talks.
Wow.
So it's not a rule. Organizer's choice. For mine, I decided no TEDx talks because this is a dream for most people too. And I was like, I had several people that had TEDx talks that I really liked their new idea they pitched to me. And I really liked it, but they'd done a TEDx talk. And I'm kind of like, okay, there's other people who haven't. So an organizer, that's up to the organizer. And I understand why they did that, because they wouldn't want you also to come and do all that, and then find out that TED didn't let it go. So organizers behind the scenes can kind of make those calls. But in the TEDx community, there's been talk about that. Like, okay, so what happens, you get somebody that has a TEDx idea and all of a sudden TED says, no, they've already had one this year and we're not letting this up to the platform. That poor person.
Yeah.
Right.
Brutal.
So that is dicey. And I asked if people had a TEDx already but I hear your situation where the time frame was so long. I would have done the same thing you did. I wouldn't have even thought about that. And it's interesting that the organizer was following you to see that.
It wasn't even me. He was following my friend.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he saw it. So that was even interesting because I didn't post anything about it. I didn't even write it in my bio because I thought maybe there's something, but it was, I guess it leaked through, right?
Yeah.
I know we're going way over here. I do have a hard stop in a couple minutes here, but I want to ask, is there any one last thing that you want to mention here that you think would be of value to aspiring speakers, professional speakers, business owners who speak, speakers in general that are at any point in that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to let you know that even with all of those fraught, distraught things that I talked about, the TEDx community is awesome. And getting a TEDx is the bomb. So I hope you took that away from me saying I'm going for my third or whatever it is that's happening, right? And I'm involved in lots of curation and speaker coaching. And so I love what TEDx stands for is this whole ideas worth spreading, right? These new ideas coming up with. So I love it. I'm hoping I'm not discouraging people, but I think if we go in it with our eyes wide open, it's helpful. Expectations get managed. You won't get frustrated, and you just know it's a long, tall game that can have a lot of variety to it. So I would say definitely that. And I would say that it's easy if you're looking at doing it yourself, that's hard. I would say try and find somebody, mentor, somebody that's done a TEDx before, a speaker coach, a program, whatever it is. Try to find somebody, because even applications, if you don't know how to fill it out right, they don't work very well. So get some help. And also that when you're thinking about a program, because there's a lot of programs out there, get some referrals. I'll say that. Ask people that have gone through that, what they think. That should be for any coach or anything you're doing anyway, right? Try to find out what's happening, because you can spend, I thought it was great spending the money I did to learn everything I did. I think it made a huge difference, because I lost a TEDx, one of the best ones in the country that I was invited to, because I didn't know how to get to an idea. And that's the final thought. Your message, your mission, your book, your workshop is not an idea. It's big. Plant the seed. Look at the chapter subtopic of a chapter is probably a TEDx idea. And that's the big thing. To assure success, you got to nail your idea.
Love it. Well, Tanja, thank you for making the appearance here. I will wrap it up here. And many thanks for making this appearance.
Woohoo!
See you. Cheers.